National Committee of Reconciliation and Development on 5 September 2021. President of Guinea Alpha Conde was captured by the country's armed forces in a coup d'etat after gunfire in the capital, Conakry. Special Forces Commander Mamadi Doumbouya released a broadcast on state television announcing the dissolution of the constitution and government. After several decades of authoritarian rule in Guinea, Conde was the country's first democratically elected leader. During his time in office, Guinea used its rich natural resources to improve the economy, but the bulk of the country's population has not felt its effects. In 2020, Conde changed the constitution by referendum to allow himself to secure a third term. A controversial change which spurred the 2019-2020 Guinean protests. During the last year of the second term and his third term, Conde cracked down on protests and on opposition candidates, some of whom died in prison, while the government struggled to contain price increases in basic commodities. In August 2021, in an attempt to balance the budget, Guinea announced tax hikes, slashed spending on the police and the military, and increased funding for the office of the President and National Assembly. The coup began in the morning of 5 September, when the Republic of Guinea armed forces surrounded Sékou Presidential Palace and cordoned off the wider government district. After a shootout with pro-government forces, the mutineers, who appear to be led by Doumbouya, took Conde hostage, announced the dissolution of the government and its institutions, annulled the constitution, and sealed off the borders. While local politicians have not explicitly opposed or supported the coup, the takeover was met with almost universal disapproval of foreign countries, which have called for the coup to stop, for the prisoners to be released and for constitutional order to return. From the country's independence from France in 1958 until 2010, Guinea was ruled by autocratic regimes including decades of corrupt rule. In 2008, a military coup was instigated shortly after the death of Lansana Conté. The military stepped down in 2010. Alpha Conde, the first president to be peacefully and democratically elected to the office of President of Guinea, started governing the country in 2010, and was re-elected in 2015. The country had a two-term presidential limit, but the 2020 constitutional referendum included a provision extending the length of terms and allowed Conde to reset his term limit and seek 2 more terms. The move had been controversial and sparked massive protests before and after the referendum, which were brutally repressed, causing more than 30 deaths between October 2019 and March 2020. After the constitutional amendment was approved, Conde won the 2020 presidential election and thus a third term in office. This was again followed by protests against the president, with opposition candidates accusing Conde of ballot stuffing. Protests continued throughout the year, and were harshly repressed by security forces, claiming at least 12 civilian lives, including 2 children in Conakry. France distanced itself from Conde following the 2020 election, leaving China, Egypt, Russia and Turkey foremost among the few powerful countries which continued to back the president. This happened as fellow West African and Central African countries have experienced democratic backsliding. Chad went through its own military takeover in April 2021. Mali had 2 such overthrows within a year, while Ivory Coast elected a president for a third term amid considerable controversy and allegations of fraud. Starting from the presidential election, opposition politicians, who were contesting the legitimacy of Conde's mandate, were repressed. For example, Mamadi Conde was arrested on January 2021, while Roger Bamba, the leader of Union of Democratic Forces of Guinea, an opposition party, and Mamadou Ouari Barry both died in prison. Prisons in the country, according to the Human Rights Watch, have very poor conditions. During Conde's regime, infrastructure to extract Guinea's extensive mineral resources improved, particularly for bauxite, with the state agreeing several multi-billion-dollar projects with Chinese firms to tap new bauxite reserves and develop an alumina refinery. Guinea holds around a quarter of the world's bauxite deposits. Extraction of diamonds, iron ore and gold ore increased. following investments in rail infrastructure through deals with Société Minière de Bocquet, a private consortium of foreign firms operating in Guinea, with the government as 10% shareholder. In 2019, the government agreed to the extension of a credit facility with the International Monetary Fund on the basis they would run a fiscal surplus, increase tax collection as a portion of GDP, reduce subsidies for petrol and electricity, increase investment in public infrastructure, reduce borrowing from the central bank and promote development of